What's happening? There we go. Thursday night show. What a pleasant surprise that is. Something a little bit different for the Tigercast family. Hope everyone's doing well and welcome to everybody. Hopefully you are able to join us tonight. Apologies for the no show on Monday night. I will put my hand up and say that was all on me. I was at Kevin Hart, so go your hardest. I've seen the comments in the thread. I'm sure that I'll cop a clip from a few people in chat, but it is what it is. Grok, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Good to be back. And I suppose being a Thursday night gives us a chance to actually talk about the team changes rather than what we think will happen. So makes it a little interesting tonight.
That's exactly right, EJ, to Grok's point, that usually we're all hypothesising about what the changes are going to be for the upcoming game, but we actually have the info in our lap tonight and can talk to it maybe a little bit easier. How are you going, mate?
I'm going all right, but hopefully you guys have got the changes because I've been under the pump looking after sick people. So, yes, I'm looking forward to hearing about what the team is.
Yeah, no, I've got it up on the AFL website on a separate tab here. So I did catch it on the way home. That's what the changes are, which we will get to. But yeah, it's I suppose a different looking show being able to do that, which was good. Welcome to everyone in chat. As Ben Kane, welcome. Hope everyone's doing well. Nick, welcome. First of all, a quick reminder that we've got Richo on Monday night, 8:30 on this Monday coming, the 3rd of April. And yeah, he's pretty much just going to join us as part of the weekly show. So just talking about the Collingwood game and the next upcoming game, which I think is against the Dogs from memory, because we don't really need to know about his history and his time as a Tiger because we've done that. Everyone knows because he's a club legend, so we don't need to exactly rehash it. So we thought we'd just pick his brain from an expertise level. So make sure we all keep an eye on that. But the game against Adelaide, fellas, it seems like such a long time ago now that we've done a Thursday show rather than a Monday. But Adelaide 10-16-76 were defeated by Richmond 17-6, 108 by 32 points. Goal kickers, Ryan with 3, Lynch with 3, Rewalt 2, Short, Dusty, Mansell, Hopper, Graham, Cochin, Broad, Bolton, Baker, all with 1 each.
Sorry, did you say Cochin?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
We're
on Koch Watch. We are on the board, folks. We need 24 more. I haven't had time to update my little game board chart for Kane Corns, but I will do that in the coming days. But no, we are on the board, EJ, which is bloody good. But the game itself, fellas, what did you make of it? Like, if you were to read that scoreline in isolation, if you were told that we were going to go to Adelaide and win by 32 points, you'd be like, okay, I'll take that every day of the week. But there was obviously a section of the match, that third quarter, Grok, get your thoughts first, that maybe was less than ideal.
Yeah, that was, as the saying is, that was a typical Richmond game for 75% of it. We were all over them for the first half, and in that last quarter, it was just that slight lapse in defensive transition in the third quarter that the Crows capitalised on. And as we talked about last week, their quick ball movement off half back really killed us in that third quarter. Their drive from their half backs, we couldn't stop. But I think 32 points looking at it, I think we were probably lucky that we piled on the goals late to blow it out a little bit. But having watched the whole game and how much better we were to Adelaide in that first half, I think 32 points is probably, I don't think we've done ourselves justice with that. If you had said we would win by 32 points based on our first half, I'd say that was probably a poor effort, considering we should have been, based on that effort, maybe an 8-9 goal win, what should have been. But credit to the Crows for them to put on 8 goals in the third quarter, and 4 or 5 of them inside 5 or 6 minutes was just insane to them. So I think there'll be some stern messages from Dimmer this week about that lapse in the third quarter, and he'll get them going, because if the Pies saw what Adelaide did to us, that's going to play right into their hands with Dacos's and side bottoms and stuff as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how we respond to that.
EJ, I suppose there's one train of thought that says that last year we would have lost that game based on the flurry of goals that Adelaide got. So there's maybe some learning to come from it, or a silver lining as such that we got the win. But apparently my auntie was saying today that did Tim. I haven't seen his post-game press conference. So if anyone else has, please help me out with this one. But apparently he was mentioning something to the lines of that he felt there wasn't much he could have done to arrest that third quarter play from the Crows. So I'm hoping that's not what he was literally alluding to, because there's plenty he could have done. But what did you make of the game and the lapse?
G'day, Boggo. Boggo used to belt me in tennis every week. He's a good man. Look, I that's the angriest I've been in a while. It really was frustrating. 45 points up at the break. You think, right, we're going to go away. We're going to get some percentage, which not that it matters for us because we've had a draw, but I really like the way we were building. And Grok, to your point, we were the much better side in the first half, but statistically the sides weren't that far apart. But our disposal efficiency and our clean entries and things, which is what we were lacking in the first week, the noticeable improvement there was fantastic. We caused a lot of turnovers again, all lots of good signs, but it just felt like a damn wall had broken in the third term. And I actually thought, we'd lose the game because it seemed that relentless. And I think we're actually lucky. I think the Crows ran out of legs big time.
Yeah.
It was definitely good that they didn't hit the front. Yeah. I think that might have given him like a second wind kind of thing to go on with it. So I think that was important. And ironically, the move that swung the game back in our favour almost was the subbing of Dusty and Mansell kicking that goal within 45 seconds. So obviously not tactical, obviously due to precautionary measures for injury. But, Mansell did his job within, a millisecond of being on the ground.
Yeah, and just with that turnaround, now these two guys weren't the best on ground, but special mention for me goes out to Pickett and Cochin. There was a 5 or 10 minute period where it got right down to brass tacks. They were just so clean and so physical. So they were going in, they were bodying beautifully to get position, and they were not fumbling, and they were, getting the ball and getting it out. There was a 5-10 minute patch there where they really owned it between them.
I think Pickett had a lot of repeat effort, Grox, as well. Like he was doing a lot of hard running and following up his work and applying pressure at the next contest, getting the ball out again. His last quarter was huge.
Yeah, I don't think his first half was great. I think he was still a little rusty getting up to the speed of the game. He looked a little slow, kept getting caught in the tackle and not being able to break the lines as he normally would. But his second half, when the game was on the line, him and McIntosh were the wingers really set the tone in that second half as that outlet kick, slowing the play down. Pickett was fantastic in that second half. Just absolutely fantastic. His repeat efforts and his defensive pressure. I think he knew he was having a bit of a dirty game in that first half and really made up for it without the ball. I think he would have been disappointed with what he did with the ball. So he made up for it with his defensive efforts.
And to talk about some of the positive side of things, in the first half in particular, I thought our ability to lower our eyes, and we were actually hitting targets inside 50, which all of us have been screaming for what feels like years. And there was a noticeable difference, and I know it's a number I harp on about a lot, but our efficiency inside 50 in the first half was, I think, in the 50s, and overall we ended up on 49%.
Yep.
Compare that to 32% or 34% from the Carlton game, and that's how much of a difference it makes. Our accuracy was good, Grok. Lowering our eyes, we're hitting leading players, and we look a 4 or 5 goal better side when we do it. It's not rocket science, but we just need to do it all the time.
Yeah, and the one thing that I noticed was even when we did the long bomb in, we weren't bombing it to the goal square for the easy kill like we did against the Blues. We were putting it 20 out, which makes it a lot harder to defend and brings in the smaller crummers. Even though there weren't too many crumbing goals, it just makes the ball a lot more dangerous and a lot harder to defend goal side, which was fantastic. I do think one of the big changes that we saw as well in that game, especially when the Crows were getting the run on, in the last 5 minutes of the third quarter, we stopped going quickly. I think that played into the Crows' hands. When we tried to go quickly, we'd stuff the handball up and they'd kill us on the transition. We actually played a very possession-based game that last 5 minutes with the chip around and maintained possession. That I think that killed the Crows having to defend their petrol. They spent all their petrol tickets trying to catch up, going fast, and then having to run from mark to mark to mark while we retained possession. I think that was the smartest thing for us to do, and something that I do feel we need to take advantage of more often, especially when sides are getting that run on. Just retain the ball when we get it. We didn't get a lot of it that third quarter, but when we did, we needed to make sure that we retained possession. Cameron is right. Samson Ryan's first quarter, brilliant. Really took the pressure off Lynch and Jack. So credit to him, especially coming off his first game, didn't get a kick. For him to be that presence up forward in that first quarter, brilliant.
Yeah, actually, there was an interesting stat that popped up when Ryan kicked that first goal. That was a first goal with his first kick in league football in his second game.
Yeah.
That would be a very, very small club, I'd imagine.
It would be extremely small. I was so pumped for him. I know a lot of Tiger fans were. And I know while this next comment isn't factually correct, but I treated his game last week as his actual debut because he had no right to play in that St Kilda game. It wasn't the conditions for him at all. Thrown to the wolves. So I'm really glad for his sake. He would have been nervous as all hell to play that game on the weekend, but I'm really, really glad for him that he kicked 3 goals and had an impact.
Yeah, we really Jack watched him last time, didn't we?
Oh, did we ever? My goodness. That's a good comparison, actually.
The great thing was too, towards the back end of the game there, he's taken that mark and he was, it was a kick of over 50 metres.
Clutch kick.
Composure, and he slotted it really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, you're bang on. He's the next player I had on my list, Jacob Hopper. I thought he played a sensational game and was very, very lucky to not do extraordinary damage to his knee. Obviously not playing this week, but that was a sign of a player who had a bit more of an understanding of the game style that we need him to play and settling into his role more. What did you guys make of Hopper's game?
I thought last week he was serviceable without being good. He did what he needed to do, but didn't really have much of an impact overall. Completely different this week. Like, I feel like the quality of his ball use and his handling and understanding of our forward structure and the way our forwards lead was a lot better this week. Seeing him in that tackle, I thought he may have broken his leg or his ankle, just the way it buckled underneath him and went over. Yeah, it was ugly. Hopper was absolutely brilliant, and it's going to be a perfect partner for Prestia. He can do all the heavy lifting, and Prestia can get, be on the outside run of that defensive transition role. So it's going to work wonders for us, I reckon.
And what about Noah Bolter, EJ? I think he had 9+ intercept marks. What I was most impressed about with him is I think it's not unreasonable to say that he had a bit of a howler against Mackay in round 1. I think he got beaten in a lot of one-on-one contests, got out-bodied, and we were just lucky that Mackay missed quite a few goals. But to come back and play that way against Tex Walker, show the confidence he had to take the game on, to take Tex on, I thought he really stood up, held his own, and he was pivotal in those last quarter and a half with stopping their forward thrusts.
Yep. What did you say was your intercept stat? 9?
It was at least 9 or 10 intercept marks, wasn't it?
Yeah, he had 11 intercept possessions. 11 intercept
11
possessions
was
in
it?
total.
Shit.
That includes ground intercepts as well.
Yeah,
right.
And the other thing is when he went back the other way, another knock we've had on him is very much like early Rance. He can be a bit erratic. He went at 85% DE as well.
He was lowering his eyes, and he was actually hitting shorter targets instead of blasting, wasn't he?
Yeah. I think at halftime, Hopper was best on ground, but I think if I was giving votes at the end of the match, I'd probably give him to Bolter. He was fantastic.
And it's funny because that matchup, looking at the stats, Walker himself had 11 or 12 marks for the game. And you look at that and you go, who was playing on Walker? And just this is where stats sort of lie. Yes, Walker may have had 12 marks, but if you look at the game, Bolter tailed him up for most of it. He got off the leash a couple of times for the goals that he kicked, but like Bolter's work in that last half, the last quarter especially, brilliant. Easily best on ground, easily.
And our other defender on debut, Tyler Young, for someone who's played only 30 to 40 actual games of football, I thought he was fantastic. You did not look at him and think, shit, he's out of his depth here. He more than held his own. He had that clutch tackle on Walker, grabbing his arm and holding the ball. His disposal was fine. I think we might have found. I know it's early days and it's maybe a ridiculous call to say I think we found one, but he didn't look out of place. I thought he looked the goods.
No, he was great, and he actually led us with 7 spoils as well. So
is that right?
Yeah,
okay.
So Vlosten and Baker had a sneaky good game, actually. Vlosten and Baker were next in that stat with 5. But no, Tyler Young, I think I said a couple of weeks ago before he debuted, he actually reminds me of a young version of Broad. He is athletic. If we give him a couple of years in this system, I think he's going to fit in absolutely beautifully. And given the fact that Broad is now missing for a few weeks, it's actually great that he's actually put his hand up and does not look out of place. I think he's good.
And I think this is why we fought so hard to have that standalone VFL side for so many years, because here's someone who's come straight in, done his craft at VFL level for a couple of years now, understood what our game style is, and now is reaping the rewards at AFL level for us. So it just goes to show that Benny Gale, when he started making, our VFL side a massive priority, having a standalone side, he knew what he was talking about. Just on his tackle though, I saw the AFL posted the clip of it, and someone actually tagged Tyler in it and goes, "You should teach Broady how to tackle." And Tyler actually responded with the laughing, crying face and then the wink face. He goes, "I'll have a word to him at training." I thought that was pretty funny.
Before we get to Broad, Paul, I think Paul's got a good point here, and he's not the only Richmond fan to notice this, but Bolton, I feel, has been MIA massively in the first 2 weeks. I'm not sure what other viewers' thoughts are, what your thoughts are, lads, but I just feel like he's well off the pace and not having any real impact for our team whatsoever.
Yeah, a bit of bathwater there, I reckon. He just needs to get back doing the simple things. And if you do the simple things, everything else happens.
I agree.
It's just bathwater. Hopefully he'll be right, but I agree with the sentiment 100%.
Yeah. I think the worst thing that happened to Bolton was him getting shifted back to the forward line after he had that brilliant game, as those brilliant run of games as that sort of starting midfielder. I think when he's up forward, he becomes too focused on goal and trying to do the flashy stuff. I think he either needs to be dropped or he needs to be put in the midfield where his selfishness can't be exposed to the extent that it is as a forward. I do think he's far more effective as a player, as a midfielder, than he is as a forward.
All right, Nathan Broad, lads. I don't think there's any hiding for it. And, to be honest, all the social stuff that I've read, I've not seen one Richmond supporter defend what he did, and rightfully so. It was a dumb tackle. It wasn't necessary. He just had to roll the player out of bounds, and it was job done. Now, I can't understand the line of thinking that the umpire maybe should have called a halt to the play earlier. It doesn't excuse it though. Like, he still didn't have to do it. And I think 4 weeks, in my opinion, is about right. I'm okay with that, but there needs to be consistency shown from the MRO across the year now that's the benchmark. And we've already seen there's not, because Burton did a sling tackle in the same week and got 2 weeks. So it's
outcome.
Yeah, that's right. But were you both comfortable with the 4 weeks?
Yep. What I'm not comfortable with, and I know it's sort of been covered a little bit, is it's because it's outcome based. You've got Pickett that absolutely missiles at someone, right, and only gets 2 weeks. if you want to stop people doing things, if you punish the action as well as punishing the outcome, punishing the action will stop it quicker than punishing the outcome will, right? And as Tig said last week, it's Russian roulette. You know, you spin it, you fire the gun. If the gun goes off, you get punished. If the gun doesn't go off, you're not getting punished. The action is the same. You're pulling the trigger.
Yeah, I think I said the other night, Grok, on the stream, that I think the outcome can play a part as an extra bit of punishment. So if it's a dangerous action, it gets 3 or 4 weeks mandatory. If you knock the guy out because of it, you get an extra 2 on top or whatever it might be.
Happy with
I
that.
think there's a secondary part that it can play as opposed to the sole reason or basis for the suspensions.
Yeah. And like I expected 4 weeks for Broad, based on obviously any sort of concussion is classed as severe impact. If it results in a concussion, the AFL and the MRO has been informed that it has to be severe impact. Now, based on that, it was always going to be 4 weeks that he got because of it, because high contact, careless, obviously because it was a tackle, and severe was 4 weeks, which I think is fair looking at it. The only thing that irritates me is comparing the actions of what constitutes 4 weeks in this case compared to Tom Stewart on Dion Prestia last year that also got 4 weeks. Now, you look at the two actions. One is a footballing action, the tackle. Yeah, Brody probably didn't need to do it. He was over the boundary line. The ball was dead. There was no need to sort of sling him to the ground in that manner. But then you've got someone who's completely run past the ball and ironed a bloke out and got 4 for the same thing. I think this is where the classifications need to change, where not playing the ball and choosing to bump someone needs to be changed from careless to intentional, because
100%.
you've intentionally not played the ball.
Whereas because there's an argument,
there's
an argument to be had that the tackle is a football act gone wrong, granted, but it's tackle is a part of the game. Whereas running past the ball and deliberately hitting someone in the head is not.
The moment you run past the ball, it has to be intentional.
100% agree. And you're right, Grog. This is where they've fundamentally got the whole thing wrong. Is that there's no grading or classification for intentional for that.
Just let Big Footy Tigercast hand out all the suspensions.
100%.
There'll never be another mistake again.
Yeah. We're all over it.
And like it's just one of those things where if Broad had tackled Walker being the bigger frame that he is, his head wouldn't have hit the ground.
Well,
Parnell is a slider player, and it just takes them to be their head to fall 1 centimeter too far to hit the turf, as opposed to someone who doesn't, and one player gets concussed, another gets right back up. There's millimeters in it, and that's where it's unfair.
Which was what I was going to say when you mentioned that about if someone put up the clip of De Goey slinging Dangerfield, and Dangerfield's head smashed the ground just as hard. Now, the fact that there's not much in there meant that he wasn't concussed.
Yeah.
And De Goey only got 2. The actions were almost identical. Because Parnell's head really did smash the turf. Like it was hard.
And it's also worth noting that obviously all the best to Parnell as well. Hopefully he makes a speedy recovery and is back out. And maybe not playing this week for his own safety, but hopefully he's back out there and up and running again soon.
Yeah. And can I give a quick tick to the club in the way that they handled it? Made no excuses. Obviously, whilst he preferred he did it, Brody went up and spoke to Nix after the game, sent a text saying, "Look, I don't want you to accept my apology. It was shit what I did or whatever." None of this shit like with a coach saying, "Oh, I spoke to Tom after the game and he was heartbroken." None of that. They just said, "Yep, we did it. We cop it."
Yeah, and that takes guts from Brody to say, "I don't want you to accept my apology. It was unacceptable what I did." Like normally a player would like, "Oh, thank you for accepting my apology," but Broad knows like there was no need for him to do that, and an apology really doesn't change the situation. And Brody probably didn't deserve to have his apology accepted either, because again, it was just unnecessary. So credit to Broad the way he handled it as well.
But the silver lining, if there is any, is it's going to give someone like Young maybe a better crack at getting another 3 or 4 senior games under his belt, and you never know what we uncover. The VFL now, Grok. This is probably more your domain. I actually don't know what the scores were, so if you have that on hand, feel free to go with it.
Yeah,
but
got it.
The main highlight from here that everyone was talking about on the socials is Bradkey with 5 goals in the first half, wasn't it?
Yeah, so the final scores ended up being Richmond 16-8, 104 to the Bull Ants 8-9, 57. So a nice little 47-point win there to kick off the season. Bradkey, 5 goals, 1 in the first half. Now, I think that is a little misleading. Like, he looked really, really good, kicked 5, moved pretty well, took a couple of contested marks, but a couple of his goals were out the back. Where other people did the work for him. So while he looked pretty good and it looked like he kicked 5, he probably only generated 3 of those himself. I think the reason he got 5 was because he is pretty athletic and managed to get goal side of the contest pretty easily. So I do think he's got a future. He looked pretty promising, and all reports are he's extremely athletic, and he demonstrated that several times. I do think, Adrian, that's a pretty good comparison. He's very much like a Charlie Curnow, just based on the way he played. The other VFL goal kickers for the AFL side, I'm not going to worry about the VFL listed players, but the AFL listed players, Bauer kicked 3. I thought Bauer, of the forwards, I do think Bauer was probably better out of Bradkey and Bauer. I think Bauer was more involved over the course of the game. Bradkey was almost non-existent in the second half. Miller kicked 2 and Rossi kicked 1. Some shout outs to the players. Stats wise, Sammy Banks had a brilliant game off halfback, going through the middle, had 23 disposals and took 10 marks, was often our switch outlet player. Jack Ross was, for me, best on ground and was the player that I bookmarked to come straight in based off that game. Had 29 disposals, 13 marks and a goal. Had a very, very good game. Obviously, Bradkey, 10 disposals, 6 marks and kicked 5-1. Biggie Nuon, for me, was probably second best on ground. He played primarily as a ruckman, had 17 disposals, 6 marks and 30 hit-outs, and just looked very, very good at the as a ruckman. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he manages to get a game this year if we need to rest one of Lynch or Ryan or even Miller as that backup ruckman. He looked very, very good in that role.
How did he go? He's obviously a bit lighter on frame compared to a normal ruckman, but was he just using, I suppose, body smarts and jumping in different areas to not get bodied out of it?
Yeah, his athleticism, his second efforts following up at ground level, and spreading from the contest after the ball had gone was brilliant. He absolutely torched the Bull Ants ruckman. So, I do think, and he's not as slight as he used to be. He's bulked up nicely now. So he's one that I think in a couple of years' time is definitely going to be an AFL ready talent. He's going to be very special, Biggie.
I have a question, Grok. Does he have a higher ceiling than Chol?
Absolutely. He's not as raw as Chol. I think Biggie's played footy a lot more than what Chol did as a thing, and he just reads the play a lot better than what Chol did. I do think he's going to be better as a ruckman too.
And not at all saying that Chol doesn't have leadership qualities or vibes, but I really do get that from Biggie, and I say that, and we've said it before on the show, that when learning his defensive craft, he's always been, up at the coaches saying, I want to play on Jack, I want to play on Tom. Like he wants to be given our best forwards in the training scrimmages to learn as much as he can. Like he's not trying to take the easy path in. And it's I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. So I'm interested to see how he keeps developing. Paul, no, it is not Mark's son. amazingly, with a surname like Bradkey, you can't think there's too many of them out there. But no, apparently not Mark Bradkey's son, because that was the first thing I asked too.
Just one more VFL update. If we're going best on ground, worst on ground for me watching the game was Cumberland. Very, very disappointing. Just had a dirty day. A lot of things didn't go right, and he was extremely undisciplined. Gave away 250-meter penalties in the game just for dissent and just stupid behaviour. Just very negative all game. So, yeah, I think there might be a bit of a sook coming from him from the way just he presented himself on the weekend, having to go back and work on the deficiencies of his game. And if the game against the Bull Ants is anything to go by, I doubt we'll see him at AFL level for a little while.
Well, we'll lead into the game this week, and I think that's very. It explains why he finds himself not in the 22. But Richmond versus Collingwood tomorrow night. Before we talk about the game, though, Damien Hardwick, 300th game as coach coming up this week, which is an unbelievable milestone when you consider how many coaches we went through during the 90s and early 2000s. To have some consistency for a long period of time and the success he's brought to our club has been nothing short of outstanding. So well done, Dimmer, on 300 games as head coach. Hopefully many more to come. I'll get your thoughts on all these players. We'll do it in one big bundle. Jack Graham, 100th game. I know, EJ, you want to give Jack Graham some love. Congratulations to Jack. And Dion Prestia, 100th game as a Tiger. So I can't remember the last time we had that many milestones in the one game. But EJ, what's your take on all three of those players in their respective milestones?
So it was two players and the coach, yeah?
Yeah. Jack Graham, Dion
Oh,
Prestia, and then Dimmer.
In Dimmer we trust, like just being the oldest here by some margin. The absolute years of just shit that I thought would never end. He needs a golden statue, that bloke. Like him and Benny and Peggy can never do anything wrong in my eyes. They could commit a triple murder tomorrow, and I'd still argue for them to get off. Dion, I think we all have come to say that, like, he's probably our most important player. When he plays, we generally go very well or win. His success rate is off the charts, and when he is out for extended periods, we generally struggle. He's so important at the coalface. As Grock said, we get now a bit of respite with Hopper and in particular in Durando. But what an off-season 2016 was on so many levels. And here we are today. And my man, Jack Graham, that tweet that is my pinned tweet, which I put out on 26th of September 2017, a couple of days before the game, saying that he was going to have a big one, and I love him. He's my boy. I think, and the reason I chose this picture is he's done his shoulder and he's missed a premiership, but we don't have that premiership without him, in my eyes. I love that he is like Lambert. He's one of those sacrificial footballers. He does a lot of the work that enables other players to be what they are, and they're the sort of players I absolutely love. Have children, have boys. If they're all like you, we're going to be laughing. Yeah. I love Jack Graham.
Yeah, absolutely. And Graham's tackle, the context of the moment he did his shoulder, massive. Like, very much a game-winning tackle, that, even though we were ahead on the scoreboard. Just the way Geelong was surging at that point, just fantastic. And you could just tell how much it meant to the boys when he got to the bench. You could see that they were so upset and shattered for Jack himself. But you could, just for Jack to say that he'd do anything for the club after that, phenomenal. Dion, like, that bloke is still underrated outside of Punt Road. by a long shot. When he is fully fit and firing, he'd be in the top 5 midfielders in the comp, in my opinion, in terms of overall output offensively and defensively. Most midfielders are either really good offensively or really good defensively. Dion is one of those rare hybrids that can do both very, very well. So he'd be an extremely valuable midfielder for every club in the league, I reckon. Just an absolute gun. And I think credit to our medical staff for getting him to 100 games, given his injury history at Gold Coast and his current injury history now the last couple of years. I think it was a bit touch and go there where Dion Prestia laid out was the running joke each and every week before games. For him to get to 100 games for the club that he absolutely loves, he's so passionate about the Tigers, is fantastic for him. And Dimmer, like, there's not much else that can be said other than he embodies what I think a lot of Richmond supporters wanted in a coach. He's passionate. He loved the club. He wasn't just there because it was an opportunity to get paid the big bucks and, you know, coach a big team. He really wanted to make a difference. He knew what a shit show we were. And I think for Dimmer to get to 300 games is a massive testament. I believe he's only the 4th or 5th coach ever to coach 300 games and be a one club coach. There have been quite a few who've reached 300 games, but have done it across multiple clubs. But for Dimmer to be among coaches like Jock McHale and coaches like that as one coach, you know, one club coaches to reach 300, just fantastic. And I think he's more than earned a statue at Punt Road with Peggy and Benny. I do think his ability at the end of 2016 to admit that he had faults and made some mistakes and to admit that he needed help is massive. So, yeah, he's a terrific human. And yeah, I think we've been extremely lucky.
Definitely have been. And as EJ said, in Dimmer we trust. Michael, it's all coming, mate. The preview of the Collingwood game. We're just giving some love to our Tiger legends. We're only at the 37-minute mark.
So
we'll
one more,
probably nudge an hour.
One more celebration. I did post this on the board, but Jack Revolt is now equal record holder with Nick as most goals kicked by a related duo in AFL-VFL history. Combined, they've kicked 1,476 goals, tied with the Ablett Senior and Junior. So if Jack kicks one more goal, him and Nick become the outright record holders
leaders.
Yeah, outright leaders.
That's a good stat, Croc. I like that.
So,
that's a very good one.
So shout out to Jack, and I can't imagine the swagger of Jack if he kicks that goal and finds out that stat. Just walking in,
feed him in the first quarter. Feed him.
Just the little head wobble as he walks in there. Shout out to Jack for that.
All right, we'll get cracking into the Collingwood-Richmond game. So the changes, and these are all official because we are on a Thursday night, not a Monday. So this isn't speculation. This is as per the announced teams. Out for Richmond, Dustin Martin, Jacob Hopper, Jaden Short, all injured, and obviously Nathan Broad suspended. Well, they've got Dusty listed as managed. So take that as you will. And in is Hugo Ralph-Smith, Jack Ross, and Judson Clark. So the emergency list is Thompson Dow, Ben Miller, Noah Cumberland, and Tyler Sonzi. Now, I will say that I had a message. I won't drop the person in unless he says so in the chat. But I had a message from someone who would know things that said that there's whispers that Samson Ryan may be a late out or a late swap potentially for Sonzi would be maybe the one you would consider bringing in, because I'm assuming because of weather forecast and our game style and things like that. So I'd feel awful for Samson Ryan if he missed out on the back of the game he dished up. But if it's going to be pissing rain, for example, and you go with two forwards, unfortunately for him, you're going with Riewoldt and Lynch as your main two, I guess, at this point in time. But What are your thoughts on the changes? I'm really, really thrilled to have Hugo and Judson Clark in. I think the need for speed is great. And I was shocked that Juddy didn't play in round one, to be fair, EJ.
Yeah, I was too. I'm pretty happy with the changes. And of having a bit of a look, and I know that everything comes up Collingwood at the moment, but I think there is a way that we can get them. So, and I think that the changes make sense given who's out and who comes in. And then if your talk of, because I don't know, I don't live in Melbourne, so if your talk that the weather is going to turn to,
well, that was probably more an assumption. Maybe it's just Melbourne, so I'm assuming it's going to be shit, but maybe it's not. But it could be a combination of things. But it was interesting to hear.
CB said today it was going to be a bit sort of miserable. So,
Jax reckons it won't rain. I will see how it pans out. It's Melbourne; anything can happen. I should say as well for Collingwood, Mason Cox is out, and Reef McInnes. That Coxie, I think, is oddly enough a big out for them. He's actually been playing not too bad in recent times, and we tend to make him look like Wayne Carey.
That USA chant, I'm scarred. Absolutely scarred. Yeah, the Samson Ryan one for me, I could understand it, but at the same time, there's still that question mark on Lynch and how fit he is, given he had scans and they weren't sure if it was a slight hammy or if it was a corky. Either way, even if it is a corky, he's still not going to be 100%, and he's going to be a little bit hampered with his leading. So on a wet night, I think that probably does help Lynch cover that slight lack of speed given the corky. So, but I would also like Samson in the side. I think we need to get games into him. And I do think he's better at ground level than what Lynch is. I think that sort of more mobility and flexibility to go through there, I do think I would like that. But then you also look, the Pies have lost Jeremy Howe as that sort of third tall intercepting type player. So going tall could be very much a risk. But in regards to the changes, I love it. Having Hugo in, I do think he should have played last week. He just offers us something that a lot of them don't give us. He's got that speed, tough as nails, good overhead, and takes the game on, which I do think we lacked a lot of that last week. Obviously, Ross. The one thing I do not want to see is Ross's sub. I think with Hopper and Dusty out, Ross cannot be sub. He has to be a starting midfielder. And I think it has to come down to either Juddy or Hugo as sub. And I'd probably lean towards Hugo as sub. I think Juddy's kicking. Hugo is great, but I do think Juddy's kicking separates him, and I do think that's going to be needed a lot more throughout the game than what what Hugo's pace will. So
isn't
no,
they I thought the sub come from the emergency list.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. The sub will come from the emergencies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, probably Sunzi then.
Yeah.
But he had an okay game at VFL level, so.
Oh, I'm just glad that both those other two boys are in. Because they'll have pace to burn for days, and especially with some of the speed that the Pies have got. And it pains us to say it, EJ, but the Pies are in white hot form. The only thing I'll say, and maybe I'm a little bit wrong, and maybe it's a bit more hope than anything else, but we kind of all felt that in their first game against the Cats, there wasn't a hell of a lot of pressure in that game. It was a bit of a shootout. The Port game, they kind of buried him early, and there was not much heat in it after it. Our best chance, EJ, possibly is that if we can apply enough pressure for long enough, that maybe it's something they haven't come up against yet this year, and it might be a way to get them. But they're moving the ball that well that we've got to be able to catch them first.
Yeah. I mean, you can only go off a small sample size, so it sort of does maybe put a bit of doubt on things. But Geelong's numbers so far this year specifically in defending balls coming out of their forward 50, is horrible. They're horrible. So when you look at that, and then Port coming over to Melbourne and not being able to play in Melbourne, you sort of say, well, look, we all know Collingwood are going to be a good side, but is it a slight false economy? Because seriously, if you deep dive into Geelong's at the moment, yes, they've got some excuses, but, they're not that flash. And we think that we were the better side than Carlton, and comfortably so, but didn't get the win. And Carlton were better than Geelong and probably should have won by more. So I think the other thing is Collingwood have played an adapted version of our game style as well. So it's something that we know, right? And it's harder for us to get beaten by what we know, because that's what we are. That's our DNA. There's a couple of sort of Collingwoody sort of stats that about them not being as strong in the contest, or Mitchell's been fantastic for them in that regard. But much like we did a couple of years back, it's that second possession outside of the contest and the ground ball get. And our ground ball get numbers are actually pretty good. So we match up reasonably well. If we had the same team as we had against Adelaide, I'd be really, really confident. I still think we're a good chance.
I agree with what JWB said. They're very much like us, but they've got that Hawthorn level kicking. Their kicking, Collingwood's kicking, especially from halfback, is the best in the league by miles. Their kicking skills are fantastic, and I think that's the key to shutting Collingwood down, is not allowing them that time and space to kick. If we can get them into a handballing game, I do think we can win. That's got to be the key. Stop their kicking.
And it's a combination of plays, isn't it? Like with the emergence of the Dacos boys, it's allowing someone like Pendlebury to kind of play a kick behind play and use his skill off the half-back line. Maynard, as much as he can be a bit of a knucklehead, has done a good job as well. Darcy Moore's been, obviously playing very, very good football down back for them. So they've got some dangerous players across all lines. The bit, and it's interesting to hear that there's a question mark over my check as well. I reckon he's really important for them. And if he doesn't play, it could leave them a little bit short up forward. I know they've got McStay and Darcy Cameron might obviously float down there, but that will be interesting if he doesn't get up.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of the game and I saw the incident where he came off. His finger didn't look too good. So if he does play, he's going to be in an extreme amount of pain. And if it does rain, heavy ball, I think it'd probably do more damage to his hand than if he stayed out. So I'm expecting Myercheck not to play. I think he's too important for them to risk having to go back for another lot of surgery on that finger, because it wasn't a very good look.
And in terms of matchups, EJ, I know that we're not traditionally a tagging team, but Nick Dacos is in ridiculous form at the moment, and I want him to get possessions because I've got him in fantasy. So let's keep that in mind. Richmond plays on tomorrow night. But seriously, though, I think he is quickly developing into one of those players that you can't tag. He's going to find the ball 25, 30 times. But I think our best bet against him is doing like what we did against Cripps in round one. We didn't stop him from getting the ball, but we actually influenced the effectiveness of the possessions that he had so he wasn't damaging. Is that going to be about the mark of what we have to do with Dacos? And if so, who do we try and sit next to him to apply that pressure?
I think a lot of the comments are sort of on it.
There's a lot of Mansell comments.
Yeah. That's got to be thought number one, I think. But again, I was talking about it a minute ago. Our pressure versus Carlton in the first game was really good. Like, we were manic. And it was a hot, contested finals type game. And you remember halfway through the first round, everyone saying, Collingwood, Geelong, they're miles ahead of blah, blah, blah. And, Richmond, Carlton, that was terrible. The reason it was terrible is because it was so hot and so contested.
Agreed.
If we can bring that manic pressure, that's also going to be taking away a tenth of a second, 0.2 of a second away from the disposal time for the opposition. It's going to create, that the hurrying up factor sort of thing, and so the disposal won't be as clean. I think we can dirty their game by our pressure being at that 180 plus level.
And that's what I was sort of saying at the start, that I don't know if I know they would have faced it in previous years, but, it's a new year, and I don't think they've come up against anything that's been sustained across multiple quarters at a high level yet. And I know it's not easy to do that, from our perspective, but if we can do it, Grok, it could be our best chance. But the Pies have got some good smalls, though. Bobby Hill and Elliott are obviously a very good combo. The matchup for that's going to be fascinating. Daniel Rioli's obviously going to take one of them, and Baker probably the other. Who would you put on who in that scenario?
Just before I touch on that, I will say with the Dacos thing, I would probably. I personally, like you mentioned Baker, I would put Baker on Dacos. No disrespect to Mansell, but I think Baker's physicality and his ability to win the ball as well, making Dacos accountable for a man directly, I think that's something that he hasn't really experienced yet. He's been a playmaker. He hasn't been tested defensively. And I think that's something that Baker might be able to expose more than anyone on the ground. Plus, if Baker gets a chance to tackle him, he's absolutely going to bury him into the ground. My only hope is Dimmer has a saying of, we learn from our mistakes. He didn't tag Neil. He doesn't tag players, didn't tag Neil in the elimination final, and he ended up being the difference in that last half. He got the Lions over the line in that elimination final. And you would think, knowing that the opposition's got a genuine game winner on their side for them, you have to start tagging, or at least try and curb them. If we can't stop Dacos from getting the ball, we need to pin him deep in the back line where he gets it, where he can't really do too much damage. But yeah, Bobby Hill, for me, I would go Rioli. I think that'd be a fantastic battle. And I think Vlosten takes Elliott, personally. Obviously, if Broad had have been playing, Broad probably would have taken Elliott. But I think, obviously, Vlosten will take Elliott this matchup.
The Rioli, I'm really excited to see him continue and grow his game. He's been exceptional for us this year, so I'm hoping he tortures him. For us, though, EJ, I think we might have maybe an upper hand in the ruck division. Nankervis, this is no disrespect to Ash Johnson, but I don't really know who he is. But I'm hoping Nank can assert some type of dominance in this game. Obviously, they've got who was that? They got Darcy Cameron as well.
Yeah, Cameron's been in amazing form, though.
Cameron's been fantastic.
Yeah.
But this is where it's going to be interesting what they do with Samson Ryan. But I think Nank's going to play a huge part in this game with how well he does in the ruck for us. And he's around the ground stuff too.
Ash Johnson's quite a handy forward, actually. He's all right. He's all right.
Okay.
I think Darcy Cameron has athletically really impressed me this season. He's moving really well. So I think Nank is going to have to get on top of him at the contest. We know that Nank will track back well and all that sort of stuff, but moving around the ground, I think Cameron is probably physically a little bit more mobile than what Nank is. That'll be a good matchup.
And what about our speed up front with the injection of Judson Clark? We said pre-season that we were looking forward to seeing Morris Rioli and Juddy Clark occupying the same forward line. And then you sort of chuck in your Bolton, Mansell, Ralph Smith kind of combination as well. And all of a sudden, your defensive pressure inside your forward 50 is going to go through the roof, Grok. I'm pretty excited to see how that pans out.
Absolutely. And the pleasing thing for me, as I mentioned at the last game, the last pod, MJ's fitness levels and everything have gotten so much better over the offseason. So he's no longer just that dedicated pressure forward that he was last year. He's now getting involved in the midfield, which again makes us even more, gives us an extra dynamic of rotation, because Judson Clark's been playing as a midfielder at VFL level as well. But we know he can be dangerous as a small forward. So it just gives us that constant rotation of having the Collingwood defenders guessing who's going to be at the forward, in the forward line, who's not going to be there at the next stoppage. And it makes us a little bit unpredictable. So, yeah, I can't wait to see those quicker players have a crack. And Clark's kicking for me is going to be a real weapon tomorrow night. Like his kicking in the preseason games was real dangerous. So
100%.
And just an area where we might have a bit of an advantage too is you got to remember this is week 2 of Collingwood with no Howe. If you go back a couple of years ago when we lost Rance at the start of the season, it took us a couple of weeks to get our system back together.
Yeah.
Collingwood didn't play much in Port last week because Port travel like Guinness, not well. So we would expect to provide a stiffer test for them, and maybe their system isn't yet right down back in the adjustment stakes.
And on top of that, we're a team that just by design of our game plan generate a monster load of inside 50s. So the ball's going to be going in there probably a lot more than they had against Port Adelaide.
We lost the inside 50 count last week.
Yep. Yeah. Even though we got our fair share, I did notice that, and
the thing is, though, Collingwood right now have conceded the second least amount of inside 50s for the opposition so far this year, behind the Swans. They're really defending that sort of half forward line well, and not allowing clubs to get the ball in. So they're very strong defensively, particularly through their midfield, which is very similar to us. As EJ said, we know exactly the game style that they're going to play. We know what counteracts it. It's just whether or not we can actually get it in place. But if we need any more ammo, we've got good old Fly's comments from Tuesday as a bit of ammo. So if ever we needed that little bit of extra motivation, that can come in handy.
And it wouldn't be a preview of a Collingwood game just without mentioning Kmart Dusty. I just think that had to be said on some level. We won't tag Kmart Dusty, but let's hypothesize that he and Taranto go head to head. Hopefully, I think Taranto feels like he's due for a couple of goals, I reckon.
Yeah.
The only thing Taranto needs to do is tidy up his disposal. His efficiency so far is below AFL average. If he does that, he is going to skyrocket. Taranto for 2 this week.
Taranto for 2? Oh,
2.
We'll take that.
Well, Hopper got his first goal last week. It's Taranto's time this week.
So I'm reading comments. More of a Salvo's seeing broken. No, it should be a good game tomorrow night. And I know we are missing some key personnel, but they've got their own kind of issues as well. They're running hot, but I think our best can definitely match up with them. And it's just going to be fascinating to see what our pressure can do to their game style. So expecting a fierce contest, and hopefully it'll be, if we happen to go over the line, it'll be massive for setting up the rest of the season. I know it's only early, but banking 4 points early on is pretty important. So we'll get a quick tip, including margin. So everyone else listening, feel free to send through what your tip and margin is for this one. Grok?
I feel dirty saying it, but I think the Pies will get us by 18. Although, if my work tipping comp is anything to go by, if I tip the Pies, Richmond are going to get up comfortably. That's how bad I'm going in my work tipping comp already. So, yeah, I think Pies by 3 goals.
All right, EJ.
I thought I was going to be the outlier.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to change my tip. Because in my footy tips that I've put in, I have tipped Collingwood. I think that this game is more important to Collingwood than it is to us. I'll put it that way. I think we're going to build more into the season, whereas I think they've hit the ground running. So, but I'll tip us by 3 points and Taranto to kick 2.
I'm in 3 tipping competitions, and I think I've gone one of each, and then my boys picked Richmond for the other one. So, I don't know. I really think Collingwood are just too white hot at the moment, but I want to pick us by about 10 or 11, but it's going to be tough going. The weather could play a part, but I am very, very excited by the youngster inclusions. I think they could give us some much needed energy around the stoppages and around the ground, and it could be our ticket to win. But if we can apply pressure at that 180 mark, like you said, EJ, for 3.5 or 4 quarters, I give us a very, very good chance because we get enough ball. We just need to make sure we convert our opportunities. I know that's common sense, but it's going to be a tough one. So
whoever wins, I am expecting a finals type game. That's what I'm expecting.
Yes.
I'm not expecting ping pong like Geelong and Collingwood. I'm expecting it to be a real scrap.
Yeah, it's not going to be a shootout.
Yeah.
And
if anything, it'll resemble the Carlton game, I reckon.
Yeah.
Both sides defending.
And if it's a bit scrappy, that might suit us a little bit better.
Yeah.
Now, I think if we're being honest, the only person who's actually winning out of all this is Tiggs with his dual membership. He's a winner no matter what tomorrow night. So make sure, please. I know he's not here, but I implore everyone to give him shit on Twitter. Either way, just as a sign of respect and for a bit of a laugh, get stuck into him. But,
I saw Sarge in chat earlier. He's another one who's not going to lose either way. Good old Sarge.
Another dual membership owner there. Well done, Sarge. But no, it should be a good game. Hopefully the Tigers get up. And just another reminder, Richo, Monday night, 8:30. We're only going for half an hour, so he's going to just talk about the game against the Pies and the upcoming game against the Dogs. It should be good, so set your alarms for that one. Other than that, though, have a great night, everybody. What's the score in the Brisbane Bulldogs game, if anyone's got that?
These are 8 points up.
Are they?
Yeah.
What quarter are we in?
We're in the last quarter. We are 11-minute mark of the last quarter.
Oh, very good. Oh, well, let's all get back and enjoy that one. I tell you what, it'd be huge if the Doggies get up. We all said earlier on that Brisbane with their list is almost should be contending, but they're kind of bottling it at the moment, which is funny to see.
Yeah. Speaking of the Lions, if anyone is interested in the VFL, Richmond are playing Coburg Saturday at 2:05 at Piranha Park.
There we go. Very good work, Grok. All right, thank you, Grok. Thank you, EJ, for your time tonight. Much appreciated. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. I know it's a Thursday night, a bit different to usual, but we should resume normal broadcasting on Monday next week. But yeah, appreciate everyone stopping by, and let's go Tigers tomorrow night, and hopefully we get the 4 points.
Absolutely.
Dylan Zhang in the comments, Hipwood for 7 years, anyone?